the shore I stand alone. Ocean's whisper calls my name. Depth and longing in my soul, seeking more than just this game. Waves crash softly at my feet, echoes in my heart so deep. Eyes on horizon far and true, longing for a love so steep. Deep calls to deep inside of me, where the sky meets endless sea. Heartbeats blend with ocean's roar, seeking depth I can't ignore. Echoes in my heart so deep. Eyes on horizon far and true, longing for a love so steep. Deep calls to deep inside of me, where the sky meets endless sea. Heartbeats blend with ocean's roar, seeking depth I can't ignore. Shells and sand beneath my toes, tides reveal what ebb and flows. In the quiet still I hear whisper longings crystal clear. Deep calls to deep inside of me, where the sky meets endless sea. Heartbeats blend with ocean's roar, seeking depth I can't ignore. Desire, burning with a holy fire. Depth of love beyond all dreams, in the vastness it redeems. Deep calls to deep inside of me, where the sky meets endless sea. Heartbeats blend with ocean's roar, seeking depth I can't ignore.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another When Deep Calls Deep. I am really excited about this one. We just did a really awesome episode with Dr. John Williams on Tuesday, and now I get to do this. Is going to be, I think, even more fun. I'm even more excited about this one because I get to do this with a couple of friends, and I always love when I get to have conversations with some friends of mine. So we are going to have some fun looking at some of the amazing wonders in space, and I think this is going to be great. So I want to introduce a couple people. First up here on the top is DJRonnieG, my friend Ronnie, and he is an amateur astronomer. I think I get that. I always get those two confused. So not the one who reads the future in the stars, but the guy who looks at the telescope and looks at the stars. So that's what he loves to do. He's got this cool telescope set up and all this fancy software and stuff, and it's going to show us some pretty amazing things. And then down here underneath is my other friend Shaun, and we are going to, when we get done looking at the cool stuff, we're going to take a look and talk about how does this make us think when we go back and read things like Genesis 1 and the end of the book of Job and some of the stuff in Psalms. Like, how does this help us kind of think about some of those things a little bit more? So I am so excited for this. So let's give a second. And even though I just introduced both of you, Ronnie, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how did you end up getting into space stuff, and what is so fun for you about that?
Well, I mean, I always liked space. I was always a fan of science fiction and was kind of brought up watching Star Trek, which is a mixed bag in its own right, both old and new. But always wanted a telescope. From a younger age, I just didn't know what to do with one. And at one point, I was younger, like I'm talking like in my teens, like so 2003. Around 2001 to 2003, I started like observing Jupiter with a camcorder, which I didn't expect to see anything. I was expecting it to be really subpar, but like that's the first time I saw moons next to Jupiter. Like I didn't know you could even see the moons, like distinguish. Like I know that Jupiter looks like a really, really obscenely bright star, but when you zoom in on it, even on like a Sony Handycam, you actually see like individual little points of light next to it. So that was like my first introduction to that. And then a friend was kind enough to lend me a telescope he got for Christmas, and I started playing with that. And I was like, oh wow, you can really see detail on these things. Like you can see the rings. It was blurry, but like you could actually see the rings. So that was kind of cool. And then like a long time later, until like 2018, I didn't touch astronomy. And at some point, I bought a used telescope from a customer when I worked in retail, and this thing was I call it a planet killer because it's like a nickname, but because it's literally designed to like really give you a good view of planets, whereas most telescopes, well, not really most, but a lot of telescopes, you get a lot of just to give you an idea, like you would think that looking at a planet requires less magnification, but it turns out that you need more magnification for planets. They're so small compared to everything else. And so this would be like what I call a planet killer, just for reference. So skipping along, I think it was a 1970. In fact, this is the telescope I bought from the customer. That's like from the 1978. And after that, it was off to the races. Next thing I know, I have a problem. I'm buying astronomy equipment and high ticket items. And I'm like, oh my goodness, where does this money pit end? And people warned me. They were like, yo, this is a real money pit. But at this point, I'm satisfied that I've acquired enough equipment to do the things I want to do, and that I'm able to do in my environment. And when I got this telescope, I got some really in fact, I could find a YouTube video later on of some mind-blowing views of the moon, where you get really up close to the craters. And ironically, I replaced. I got a different telescope right now that has less magnification, but it's easier to get pictures of nebulas. So, like we talked about the pillars of creation the other day, or the Eagle Nebula. It's usually you have to have that camera. Well, I'll explain that more later. But long story short, I saw some cool stuff. I really liked what I saw, and yeah, it kind of just fit my interest.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so excited for this too. So, Shaun, why don't you give us a minute? And I you like space stuff and also love the Bible and God's creation. So, why don't you talk a little bit about introduce yourself and talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I'm Shaun. I have really no experience with the outer space other than I just love it. My favorite planet was Jupiter. I always wanted to see it for myself. But I never had a telescope until I turned, I think I was 19. I finally bought a telescope and I had no idea how to use it. So it just collected dust. Because, stupid me thought, oh, you just look through the thing, and I couldn't see anything. So I didn't have internet at the time, and never bought another telescope. Just went online and looked at pictures, and that's kind of how I sated my hunger for seeing the planets and stuff. But this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited. All right, so Ronnie, we are going to. Can we just for Shaun? Can we look at Jupiter first, real quick, and then get on to the list of the other stuff? Because we want to do. Shaun is here as a special friend and guest, so let's give Shaun some Jupiter to look at first.
Okay, you know what? Luckily for us, I think we actually have some old archive imagery of Jupiter. So I'm going to pull that up right now. And basically, I started like collecting imagery in 2018 or early 2019. And so we have like a decent repository of image data here, just to give you guys an idea. And the thing that's funny about photographing Jupiter is like when you see it through the eyepiece, you'd think, oh, I'll just take a picture of this and I'm off to the races. But surprisingly, the way you do these things is you take multiple pictures and you stack them together to get more contrast. So let me just see if I get the picture. I'll show you exactly what I mean. Here we are. Okay, so actually this might not be Jupiter. This might be Jovian moons, but we'll get there. We'll find what we're looking for here. Because of course Jupiter has...
Ronnie, why don't you hit the go on the bottom and hit your share screen so that I can make that bigger so everybody can see it. Yeah,
absolutely.
So we can make that even bigger because we really want people to get to see this cool stuff. So that would be awesome.
Let's see. I hope it lets me pick the screen. Okay, it looks like it lets me pick my screen. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, good. Screen 1, 2. Okay, I got 4. I got to make sure I get the right one.
Okay.
3. All right, good. That's number 3. There we go.
Right. There we go. There we go. We want people to see this as best as we can here because I've seen the stuff you show on your streams, and so I know what good stuff is coming here.
So we're going to start with this really dull one right over here, and we'll work our way up. So in this one here, you literally just see a white ball, and you see these points of light. And sometimes when the weather is not good, I'll just kind of do what I'll get something, and if I span the pictures apart enough, I can I can capture the movement of the moons as they move across their orbits. But now let's see if we can find a nice picture of Jupiter. And if I don't find it here, I'll go on my Instagram and get it, because I know by then I'll find it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because with that, when I switched to the new telescope, it's just I don't do as many planets anymore. I'll admit, but we're gonna get us a Jupiter here. I know we got one. We got hundreds of gigs here, terabytes of imagery right over here. So I'm crossing my fingers here that I will have a picture of Jupiter for you guys. Because if not, I'm gonna have to guess my Instagram password. But no, jokes aside, I'm sure I'll be able to get into that.
Well, I'm not doubtful at all. I mean, this guy Ronnie spent 15 minutes of one of his live streams trying to find a purple planet for me one day, and found one that looked purple. So I have all confidence that we're gonna get something really awesome here.
Yeah, I'm gonna sign into my Instagram, because I think that's gonna save us a lot of time. And for the pictures that I can't immediately find, because I got some stuff lined up for you guys for sure with the Eagle Nebula, but this one we'll get this one right here. Gonna enter my Instagram password. I rarely see. That's how often I use Instagram now. Not really fond of the platform that much. A lot of back and forth on there. But here we go. So we got. Oh, here we go. I can log in with Facebook. Good, because I don't remember that login. Okay, there we go. It looks like it's actually letting me sign in. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, not a problem.
It's funny, the word Jupiter don't find anything here. Look at that. I type Jupiter, nothing there. Okay, but we got the Instagram now, so I'm just gonna get the profile page up, the feature presentation, and then I'll put that on the screen we're looking at.
Okay, so Roddy wants to know, what software are you running there to find planets, Ronnie?
Well, right now, the pictures I have on my computer, I'm just using the Windows File Explorer to find the pictures that I've already taken. And the software I use for capturing, usually I'll use, if you look back here, actually, this is what I would use for taking the pictures. This is an application called SharpCap. And essentially we put it into, we connect it to a USB camera, which behaves a lot like a webcam. Now, right now, this is my Meteorite camera. And I use this one here just to kind of see the sky to monitor the meteorological conditions. So right now you can see it's cloudy outside, and ironically, later on I'll show you something else that's relevant to that. Wow, I feel like such a older person right now navigating Instagram. Let me tell you.
I think now you know how I feel all the time.
I think I'm the boomer here today. Here we go. That's my name. I gotta click on that. There we go. Okay, good. We got it. I felt so confused. Okay, so let's see. We got doing everything is wholesome here. So I know this is gonna be backwards, answering the question backwards, Shaun. But we're gonna just start with the old telescope setup. Actually, this is the telescope I presently use. But if you look back here, there's a filter wheel that's humongous, and I don't use that one at the moment. I use a smaller one, but essentially I use a black and white camera to take pictures in color. But the picture of Jupiter you're going to see was taken using the more conventional color camera. So this is my early setup back when I was able to get good pictures of Jupiter, and you'll see we have this big orange bucket here. And one thing about telescopes is that it's really more like a bucket for collecting photons. It's not so much about the magnification or anything. I mean, yes, focal length, which is a number that measures for all intents and purposes, the higher the focal length, the more zoom you get. Although people usually say things like narrow field of view. But that being besides the point, this is the telescope that does that type of thing. And in my early days, I used to have to actually assemble this thing. I had to actually go and take the whole thing and assemble it, and then disassemble it at the end of the night. And nowadays I use an outdoor cover. Thank God. I mean, really, it was like, that's like a difficult, and I dreaded that experience, especially when it's really cold outside. But essentially we used an application, and back then I was still aiming manually. In fact, you can see a hand controller here, but I was starting to use my laptop to aim the telescope. Today, it's much easier to aim and automatically recenter the image. Okay, so backwards order, like I said, this is my first decent picture of whatchamacallit, of Saturn. And this
Ooh.
one here, what was weird was like, okay, if you look at it through an eyepiece, it looks so like relatively crystal clear. It looks pretty sharp, pretty bright. Planets like Jupiter and Saturn have what we call a high albedo, which means that the clouds reflect a lot of light, which is part of why you see such brightness. Now, one time a friend of mine asked me, why does Jupiter or Saturn look so bright when you look at it from the ground, but when you look at it from a picture, it's not as bright? And essentially, a rule about optics, whether it be camera lenses or telescope, the more focal length or the more you extend your focal length or zoom, essentially you're spreading the light over a wider area. So whether it be a camera's image sensor or a piece of 35 millimeter film, it's going to be the same amount of light bouncing off of Jupiter, whether it takes up the whole frame or it takes up this much of the frame. And so as you're taking up less frame, you're just concentrating those photons. And that's sort of one of the reasons why I went with the less magnified telescope, is because it was easier to get more photons in less time for things like nebulas. It was more forgiving than the big orange one, where the big orange one, fantastic scope, but less forgiving, like when you're off target. But for planets, that's not all as important. The main issue of this telescope was that there's a mirror that you have to align, and we can talk about that later on. But essentially, they call it collimation. Light goes into the top, and actually, this little bump here is the secondary mirror. So there's actually a donut-shaped lens around that bump, and the light hits the back of this, forms a cone. That cone bounces off of this mirror that you can't see right now, and then it goes straight down a hole in the back. And you can see there's a hole in the back where the eyepiece is located, and that's where I would slap my camera. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because, like, if that mirror is off alignment, oh my goodness, it's so annoying to realign it. And so the reason I switched to that white telescope is just so I can avoid that whole procedure, because I wasted a lot of nights putzing around until I eventually chipped the mirror on that. I can show you pictures later. I actually have those pictures right there. So let's keep looking here. But the reason I showed this before, Jupiter is one, it came up first, but two, it wasn't just a still photograph. Like, a still photograph would have looked way fuzzier. To get this to come out the way it did, and this is before I had any of the equipment I have now, at least the decent equipment I have now. I would use basically a digital camera with video, recording capability to record a video at 60 frames a second, which is pretty standard what cameras can do. And then you would put this to image stacking software, and the image stacking software would be like, I might even have a picture of that procedure, because it always, like, first time I seen it work, it blew my mind, kind of. It was just like really weird how it worked. But in a nutshell, even if I don't show you how it works, basically, you take those multiple pictures from the video. The software will combine the good pictures. It'll discard the bad pictures. It'll sort of like discard elements of different pictures that don't work out well. And then in the end, you're getting a picture. Yep, I found it. You're getting a picture of more contrast. So this workflow applies to both Jupiter and Saturn. So first I use one app to kind of discard or, favor what pictures to keep. Then I use another app that finalizes it. And there's a step in there called wavelets. And I believe wavelets are like a mathematical function that has to do with like a radius of pixels. And that doesn't make sense because I don't even know what I'm talking about when I say that. But essentially, I move these numbers around. And when I move these numbers around, we start out with this really blurry picture. So if we go back to the beginning, you're going to see that. I know this is a very blurry video. I kind of made it a GIF to kind of make it easy for people to load. But essentially, we have the software draw these little blue boxes called alignment points. And it's looking at, contrast features of cloud, details. So like a dark spot versus a light spot. And the reason it does that is it wants to now analyze 1,000 pictures, and it wants to find the common elements, things that each picture has in common. So after you run it through the stacking process, after you do this part here, we're going to just slide it on forward here. And you're going to see that this is the picture, like right there. This is what the camera that I recorded the video on it resulted, or this is what one picture looks like. I mean, look, it's like cool. You can see the ring. It's better than nothing. And even like a modest telescope, it'll look a little bit better. For whatever reason, when you're dealing with cameras, like it ends up looking a little bit worse than whatever you can see through the eyepiece. And so using the stacking and the wavelet settings down here, we're gonna see this picture suddenly pop into like looking really nice or decent, not really nice. I'd say better. And right there. And now the only thing I did wrong was when I was doing my processing, the Instagram picture, what I did that was incorrect was you'll see these little shadows here, and I really didn't know what was causing them. It's really just the shadow from the planet. So I actually
Mm.
filled these in Photoshop, and so at that point, it ceased being as original as it was before. So not really a big deal, all things considered, but I just wanted to point out that even if this isn't aesthetically pleasing, this turns out to be a feature that I should have retained in my Instagram pictures when when I did that there. Let's keep rolling the tape, see if it gets any clearer. But essentially, the main things we like seeing is that, oh, see, like right there, that transformed a bit more. Now we got a little bit more of the contrast. And that's because when I was taking the original frames, capturing the original individual frames, the atmosphere is our enemy. You're going to have thin clouds flying over your positions. And there are times where it will be a clear night, according to the weather forecast. But if you look at like the satellite imagery, you'll see these, what they call thin ice clouds, basically. Just clouds that are really thin, that don't really obstruct your view, but they literally have little ice particles in them and they scatter light. So when you start magnifying stuff, it really shows. It starts to really throw a monkey wrench into the works. And if it's the summertime and you got humidity, that's not going to be helpful either. So let's see here if it gets any clearer. And there we go. So about approximately there. But my main thing I would want to show is this, I believe, is called the Cassini division. This is basically just a gap between the rings, or an area where the rings have a different composition. And part of that is Saturn has these moons that sometimes people will call shepherd moons. Is that sort of going around orbiting within the rings and scooping up rocks and ice along the way, so clearing a path. But let's see if we can find Jupiter now that we went over Saturn. Okay, so we're back here. We got my turtle. He's becoming a computer programmer. And the moon. Okay, so this is the celestron. So this is something I cannot do on my present telescope. I cannot get this level of magnification. But even like when it's not great, I think it's spectacular what this particular imager can see. Oh, is this Jupiter? Not a Saturn. It literally is Saturn. See, that's actually, I know it's really small, but that's literally what Saturn looks like when I'm capturing it. When I showed you that picture a moment ago, this is literally what I saw in the camera at the time I was capturing it. So for reference there. And this, I think, is Jupiter. I think this is just two different things. I think this is Saturn and this is Jupiter. So, ironically, we got the zoomed out picture of that. We already saw that. Let's see, that's a wide shot in color. Just for reference, the telescope that lets you see planets up close like that, you can see the configuration right there. You can see that there's a big mirror right there. It's essentially shaped like a bowl. And so this one here, this is actually a lens here shaped like a donut. The light bounces off the mirror and then bounces off the little dot in the middle and goes down the middle. And so that's what the camera is dealing with. Now let's keep rolling here. Any questions so far?
No, I'm gonna yeah, this is really it. I've no idea what this stuff is like, telescopes and stuff. I'm totally clueless. So this is really interesting. I'm actually I'm learning really cool stuff.
Cool. Well, what I want to do is I want to comb my we got some pictures of Jupiter here. Okay, let's see if any of these will give us what we're looking for. I'm concerned it's a mixed bag, but we'll give it a shot. So this computer I'm logged into is actually an outdoor desktop PC that I built purely for controlling the telescope, because I've used laptops, I've used various machines, but I just found that having a desktop was ideal, because I found that USB ports on PCs can be very, very what do you call it? Like slow, like not slow, let me rephrase it. You can only have two high resolution, high frame rate cameras plugged into a computer at the same time, being used at the same time. And then after that, if you try to turn on another camera, things get a little weird. So I would sometimes run into these weird issues depending on what accessories I was plugging in, or what devices I was using. And in the end, I just found that having a desktop was like really just, oh, that's weird. Did I do that? Oh, that's so weird. The video player is trying to play my picture. Oh, there we go. Okay, we fixed it. That was weird. It was like looping the playlist. It was like trying to play something that didn't exist. Okay, that's the same picture I showed you before. Boring. I'm sorry to disappoint. I might not have a picture on deck for Jupiter here, but we're gonna try
Oh, that's okay.
one
We
more
can.
thing here. Because this is the folder that has the lion's share. So maybe I put it under a different name. Like we got moon. Got a lot of pictures of the moon, I'm sure. Ooh, the Rosette Nebula. And these are the early pictures. So the reason I'm looking here is because this is where my best planet pictures would have been. And I think at the time I was putting a lot of work on the moon because the moon was definitely in season. Oh, is this when I got the sun? Oh no, this is the so we got pictures of the sun too, by the way. Those I could definitely pull up. Um let's just see what we have in the sun. Let's see,
I also
solar.
want to get to the other two that I sent you because Shaun asked about those.
Well,
So
here's what I'll do. I think we should circle back for Jupiter later. Maybe I'll find it while we're on a different topic. And in the
mhm.
meantime, like real quick, just random stuff I found. That's the sun right there. Now, the equipment I needed for the sun is like a whole of the animal. Essentially, we
Mm.
would use what we call a quark. And a quark is named after the guy from Star Trek with the big ears. But jokes aside, this is a solar filter that actually has they call it a hydrogen alpha filter, and it filters out light that comes from ionized hydrogen, basically electrically charged gas or plasma from the sun. And just about everything that I image, like when I take a picture of a nebula, when you see a picture of any nebula, a lot of times
Mhm.
you're going to see that those clouds and those puffy clouds that have the nice texture are
Mhm.
captured on a different type of hydrogen alpha filter because stars emit
Wow.
that kind of light. That's the kind of light that you can essentially exclude all of the light pollution. You could exclude the sky glow from the moon. You could exclude the city lights, and you could just collect light of that particular type. And so when you're doing the sun, you have to use this one. It's a little more complicated, but essentially it's doing like two things. Hey, what up, dude McMahon? It's cutting down the brightness of the light by like 99.8% or some crazy number like that. And then it's tuning into a very particular part of the EM spectrum. And the EM spectrum is essentially like a radio dial in your car, like the old car where you turn the knob. It's literally like that, not even kidding. Like it is it is just something like that. But anyway, let's get I got the pictures of the other two things. So I think we'll definitely grab those right now because they're already up. And I remember you asked me if I could show you on my own telescope the pillars of
Mhm.
creation, the Eagle Nebula, right?
Right.
Well, I'm gonna show you why we ran into a problem, and
Okay.
not really a problem, but why it
Ooh.
cannot be done with ease. And there's a very simple answer to this right here. So let me see here. This is the application, one of the applications I can use to control my telescope. I use a different one now, but essentially you can I use this for planning my nights because the new app I use is more efficient. This app is nice because it actually gives you a pretty good preview of what you're looking at. But what any decent planetarium app does is you give it your location or approximate location, your longitude and latitude, and you have the date and time on the bottom right corner. And this is literally like my backyard right now. And so I want to look at the Eagle Nebula or the Pillars of Creation. So, oops, that's the wrong one. Eagle Nebula. So, number one, it's underground right now. But what time of the day does it show up? Well, let's rewind the tape and see what time I could have looked at the Eagle Nebula.
So underground, what does that mean when you say it's underground? Does
Oh,
that
it's
mean
literally on the other side of the globe. Yeah. So
okay.
right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna rewind. We're actually rewinding time right now, like a tape, or literally, we're just like as we're basically in this app, we're simulating what would happen if the Earth was spinning backwards. And Eagle Nebula is right there in that little reticle. So a little bit of a problem there. Not really possible to do long exposure photography during the daytime, right? But just for reference to show where it is in the sky, or give you guys a couple of different views of it because I did line up a couple of views. Okay, this one here doesn't even give us a preview, and that's all right because we don't need a preview from this app because, well, like I said, it's out of season right now. So a lot of times, certain targets will be in and out of season as the Earth rotates and as we're orbiting the sun. You'll have a season where you're looking outside the Milky Way galaxy. You're looking at other galaxies, and you'll have a season where you're looking into our galaxy, where you can see the nebulae that reside in our own galaxy. And so I created this folder called Amber Stream, and it has a couple of pictures that I curated. Um, of various things, but 2 of them are of the Eagle Nebula. And in fact, there's a link here that shows a little bit more about the Eagle Nebula because there was a really cool one where what it did was it showed a direct comparison between the James Webb and the the Hubble Space Telescope. So we're gonna just kind of grab the links and see which one is which. It's funny. I created like a separate Firefox profile before the stream. I was like, "Oh, this will be perfect. Everything will be nice and neat." And then it's like, "Hey, where's my bookmarks?" Um, but anyway, just a quick glance of the two. For reference, the older one is the Hubble, and I think in this one, yeah, this is cool. This one here, I like this picture because at least it doesn't load.
Always happens when you're on a live stream, right? It works great
Yeah.
until you're live streaming, and then whoops.
I'll zoom in on it like this. But you can see, just like they did this nice little
Wow.
cut out, and you got Hubble, Webb, and it just seems like now one of the things if I remember correctly, James Webb is designed to see more infrared light than regular, visible light, whereas Hubble was made for visible light. And the reason they went this route is because you can use infrared wavelengths to kind of punch through dust to see things light that would pass in between the dust, so to speak. And this is actually a trick that I did a lot in the past because, like, when I was going through my pictures folder, my astro photography imagery folder, that is literally like I have what was it? Not Veil Nebula, North America Nebula. I think it's North America Nebula, and I think I misspelled it back then. So we'll type in the word, and I abbreviated North America Nebula. So maybe that'll come up in the background. But in the meantime, now we'll just show you the close-up. So we're gonna start with like the OG. Because I remember the first time I seen this, like I was a kid, I must have been like, I don't know, 10 years old or something like that, And where did I put there it is. Okay, no, I'm just setting that up there. That's not helpful. Okay, there we go. Good. I just want to put it in a frameless view. So anyway, I remember like they had this in a news article or the Weekly Reader in high school, and at the time they had pictures that were like a little bit like less complete. They looked a bit like this, or there was another picture I was looking at earlier that I have in one of my links where it was like literally like a mosaic of these things here. So I may have that picture lined up here too. Hopefully that's the link I just found. Unless it's the same link we were just looking at. Oh, apparently it is. Okay, so it's not in there. But these NASA websites are cool because you don't just get the press release. You don't just get the pictures that they want people to see, right? Or that people who have doubts about space being real might say they want you to see. But you're going to get the raw data. And the cool thing is that based on the workflow I use, the pictures are consistent, at least consistent with what I would expect to be coming out of that telescope when it's raw. So you get into black and white pictures because essentially you can use black and white cameras to take pictures in color. And essentially we're doing that by using this methodology here. You have a thing called a filter wheel, and you can do this by hand, but essentially it looks like a little carousel with these little colors in it. And they come in different shapes and sizes and price points. And essentially what you would do is, like, as this reference right over here, open image new tab, a little blurry, but essentially the way this works is you have a black and white camera behind the filters, and you can remotely switch between red, green, and blue. Now imagine you got the red filter, light from space is shining through the red filter, it hits your black and white camera. Now, even though you're going to end up with a black and white picture, in the end, all you got to do is convert that picture. Instead of black and white, you convert it to black and red, because you know that the only light that could have come up as white, the only light that would have hit that camera would have been the color red, because everything else is excluded by the red filter. So essentially you're converting your black and white pictures to either black and red, black and green, and black and blue. And then what you do then is you take those 3 pictures, you combine them together. I'm a little oversimplifying it, but essentially you combine the 3 pictures together, and that's how you get color. And this is essentially not too dissimilar, not terribly dissimilar to how they did Technicolor. So if you watch old films, they go, this is done in Technicolor. You get a picture of the Technicolor camera, you're going to see that it's doing something somewhat similar to this. It's getting the colors in separate passes and then combining them later. So I bring...
Does that go on the telescope then?
Yep. That goes on the back of the telescope. Yeah, so just like the
Wow.
picture earlier where you saw like that big thing on the back of the telescope, that was that was exactly what that was.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Oh,
like
that's
that,
incredible.
yeah, and I was surprised. But I didn't know anything about this when I started. Like I remember like
Mhm,
trying to download Hubble imagery and going, "Hey, why is it all grainy and black and white?"
mhm,
And part of the graininess is because you're gonna start out, especially when you're taking pictures from the ground, you're gonna get these crummy images that like are just affected by the atmosphere, and depending on what settings you're using. And one of the weird things is that with cameras, digital cameras like your phone, you might have noticed that when you take a video or a picture indoors in medium light or low light, and it's warm, the picture comes out grainier, and that's because the image sensor's job is essentially the camera is or the sensor in the camera is responsible for taking photons and converting them to electrons. So if you get more photons, you get more electrons. They could use that measurement to put into a file saying this pixel should be bright, this pixel should be gray. What it does, that. And the thing is that that sensor has a tendency of taking heat and turning it into electrons as well. So the obviously heat is going to be kind of random. It's not going to, help the quality of your image. And so the cameras we use and that the more professional telescopes use, actually have a device that cool it down to a set temperature, like a thermostat. You can literally tell the camera, like, cool it down to -10, -15 degrees. And the cooler you get it, the less graininess and the less what they call dark current, which is essentially like a pattern of noise that looks like areas of dark and light throughout the image. And so the reason I that's important is because we're not just taking one picture in the red, blue, and green filter. And just for reference, that thing right there, that's
mhm,
the filter wheel. So you got the camera over here. You got a USB cable, which is where the pictures go from here to the computer. You have a 12
mhm,
volt power cable, which actually typically uses the automotive plug, like, the automotive cigarette lighter plug. But I bought AC DC adapters. I found a company in Hong
mhm.
Kong that sells the camera with the power adapter. It always bothered me. I buy a camera from any company and they're always sending me like a cigarette lighter. I'm like, I get it. If you're traveling, you're hooking up to a generator. I get it. But like I'm at home. I don't need this because then you got to buy a thing that converts the, automotive plug to regular. And I always found those devices to be like kind of sketchy, unreliable,
Mm,
unwieldy. Maybe it's just like during the summer they would overheat. During the winter, I'd have to be like, oh my God, it's getting wet. You know, I don't want
right.
water to get on that. But anyway, bottom line
So
is that
for reference, how is that like a reference to like a dinner plate size? Is that
that
like
one
dinner plate, salad plate, like
That one's like,
for
yeah, that's about dinner plate sized for sure.
okay.
And that's an unusual one. That's an 11 slot filter wheel. Now, the
Mhm,
one that I use now would be the 7 slot filter wheel by this company. And that's mainly because I have to effect repairs on the filter wheel you see in the picture. But the
mhm,
one I use right now is indeed this one here. And you can see it's pretty much the same concept. It's just this one's much smaller. It's like,
mm,
for reference, smaller than this bottle, I guess. I mean, wider, but not as tall,
mhm.
right? And yes, this is Petey the Robot's oil container that I have water in. But just there we go. And so I actually have to take like dozens of pictures in each filter. So you take a dozen pictures in red, then you stack them in order to eke out more contrast. Essentially, the main thing you're doing is you're trying to get more dynamic range, which I'm pretty sure is just a fancy way of saying contrast. And contrast, you could say, is the difference between your darkest black and your lightest light and the shades in between. And so we actually take dozens of pictures in red, green, and blue. We stack them individually as channels, the red, blue, and green channel, and then we combine them together. And that's how we get our color composite. And so when
Okay.
people say that pictures, from space are fake because they use Photoshop, yeah, absolutely. They're not using Photoshop, but there is a image processing workflow involved. And if you look at like, the camera used, the equipment, you can see like pictures of the cameras, you can see schematics. Everything is designed with a purpose in mind. It does the thing that people say it does. Um, but anyway, where was I? What was I going to show you guys? Oh,
Okay. We were looking at those cool like space stalactite things.
oh, yes, yes, yes,
There
that's
you
it.
go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's get a nice now this one's cool
Wow.
because this is a super duper high res image here. And what button do I have to press to zoom in on it? Okay, good. I just want to zoom in on it because we're gonna zoom in at 100% zoom, which is 1-to-1 zoom. Right now, this thing is vastly
Mhm,
zoomed out. This is one of the reasons I downloaded the Hubble
mhm.
imagery. So this is our super duper close up right
Wow.
here. And one of the things you're going to notice are that all of the stars have these beautiful like lines on them called diffraction
Oh,
spikes.
that's
And there's a
amazing.
reason for that. Yeah, no, this is
Is
lovely. I got to say, I wasn't expecting it. I thought it was going to come out a lot grainier than this too. Now I'm just going to get a picture that's relevant here because I want to show you guys what causes the diffraction spike. So
that
because
is
this,
just absolutely I'm just like, Shaun, wow, is that like amazing or what? That
Yeah, I mean, it's like the most beautiful thing you could ever see. I mean, it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like a spiritual experience looking at this. It's
when you
crazy.
see it, yeah, when you see it in real life, that's one of the things I found interesting. It is almost like a spiritual experience at times. Like when you see like Saturn and it's clear for the first time, and or like when I remember I was taking the blurry pictures and then like sharpened up the pictures of Jupiter that I didn't show you guys. Like, and if I don't find it today, I will send it to you, Shaun. I will have, or send it to Amber, and because I do want you to see Jupiter. I want you to have, I'll curate the whatever picture I have, that I consider decent. But like just like even like a while, like a year or two ago, I took the camera off my telescope. I put the eyepiece back on. I looked at Jupiter, and even though this telescope I have now doesn't have a lot of zoom, its optics are tack sharp, and it just blew
look
like my
at
mind.
that.
Like how bright it is. Now, this would not be bright. This would actually come up as a very dim object. And then, like, there's people like, in fact, I can't show you my image, but you know what? I will show you other amateur images of this object in a moment. So, Eagle Nebula, oh, what's the right? Astro Bin.
I'm
That's a
just
website.
my just mind is blown. Look at that. That's incredible. Like
Now,
it
just for reference, you ever see those telescopes that have like they look like they have like a little like almost like not a cross shape. Sometimes it's a cross shape. Sometimes it's a pattern. Like let's see here, like what's it, Newtonian telescope, and we're gonna look at the front. So one of the things you're gonna notice about a lot of telescopes is when you look at the front of them, and this is because this is gonna explain what the stars are doing. See this like little cross shape up here that disappeared because B&H wants me to reload their webpage. Um, that was helpful.
there you go. Okay.
So see that like little area in the front there that
Yeah.
has like a little. So remember I had the donut shaped lens on my telescope. This telescope doesn't have a donut shaped lens. All it has is this thing that holds the secondary mirror up there. So there's actually a mirror over here, and there's a mirror at the back of this bucket. So the light has to move past this, but because this part is so close and so out of focus, it doesn't factor in. That's why it doesn't really block anything. It blocks like 7 or 10% of the light. And oddly, the mirror on here is on a 45-degree angle, and you can barely see it, but it's literally like essentially the light goes, it bounces off the mirror in the back, and this is how the Hubble works. It hits the back of the black dot here, and then it bounces it, actually it bounces it sideways into this thing here. And that's where you're either going to put an eyepiece or a camera. So essentially, when using an eyepiece, the different magnification eyepiece, the different powers, you're essentially magnifying your view of the side of this little mirror here. And then it's whatever light was bounced off and focused on it already that you're going to end up seeing. But the thing I wanted to point out was it is the shadow or the blocking of light, whatever you call it, that's casted by these little fins or blades that are responsible for the diffraction spikes. And so Hubble, I believe, has like either like a 2 or 4 bladed design. I mean, we can see a picture of it, but you'll see that depending on how the spikes are arranged. So this one has an L shape, it makes a cross. This one has just a line on the bottom and top, so it makes a straight line. This one has 3 blades on it, and so oddly, it ends up producing a spike pattern that actually takes 1, 2, 3. I can't count. 2, 4, 6. There's like 6 spikes right over there, and that's basically because it's like there's a bowl-shaped mirror, so a spike on this side gets reflected on that side of the bowl, so to speak. And then James Webb has a crazy mirror. I mean, you all seen the hexagons, and part of it was they needed the ability to fold up the mirror and tuck it away inside of that rocket before launch. Just like they might be able to pick up the payload, but the bulky loads on rockets are a little bit tricky at times. And there are ground-based telescopes that have a very similar setup with these hexagon mirrors, but they vibrate like 1,000 times a second in order to correct for the twinkling stars. So if you have moisture in the atmosphere, they can measure that. They can shoot a laser up and measure the difference in, and essentially they counteract. They basically vibrate the mirror in the opposite way of the star twinkle, which doesn't make sense the way I'm explaining it, but hopefully it gives like an illustration. So getting back to that lovely picture, I know that's what we're here for. Um,
Man,
that's it. So,
that's
that's why we get diffraction spikes right there. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit there, and then we'll take a look at a James Webb version in a moment. But this is referred to. I remember when I first learned about it, they referred to it as a stellar nursery. Do you guys know anything about the background about this? Like what it is? It's pretty
I
cool. Yeah.
don't. Can
Okay.
you
Well,
give like
basically,
a
it's a
quickly?
place where stars form, or at least we're seeing an area where stars were in
Um,
formation. Even down here, essentially, the idea, the prevailing theory is that you have a bunch of gas in one area, and as the gas gets more dense, or as you have more dense objects, hanging out in one place, that creates a dent in the gravity field or whatever. Basically, the stuff gets pulled in closer, kind of starts getting compressed, and when you have a ton of gas, and by a ton I mean like a number with zeros coming after it that I can't even off the top of my head fathom. The weight, the pressure of that starts pushing on that gas in the inner part of it. And like they say that the sun has nuclear fusion. And so what's interesting is it's not so much that we're burning hydrogen in our sun, it's that they're under, and one of the reasons why you don't see fusion reactors underground is because you could replicate the pressure using magnetic fields, but you can't really replicate. We don't know how to make gravity. We don't even know if we can make gravity ever. It's like just that's like in science fiction, they'll be like, oh, we got artificial gravity generators and inertial dampers, which inertial dampers prevent whiplash. So if your rocket makes a sharp turn, you don't get injured in science fiction. That's a totally made up thing. I get it. The writers need their MacGuffin device. It needs to, you're not gonna have Star Wars doing, if you don't have something. I get it. And then gravity, because you can't live on in space in zero gravity or microgravity for like indefinite periods of time without incurring health issues. And so, whether that affects your bone density or your eyesight, it's just not a good, long-term health plan. So if you're gonna put people on a ship for an extended period of time or a space station, that's a thing that they need to address. So in science fiction, they can just be like, "Oh yeah, we got a generator for that. Generates gravity." It's like, yeah, non-existent nonsense as far as I'm aware. But anyway, it's that combination of the gravity pushing on the gas and of the elements, and then as you get that pressure increases, you're gonna get heat that comes with that. And at some point, I'm definitely skipping a lot of steps here, but you have your two helium or two hydrogens or whatever it is. I don't even remember. They get fused together, and the act of them getting fused together, they release a ton of energy. And if you guys ever seen an atomic bomb test, you know that that little piece of plutonium that might be this big can do quite a lot, or even if it's this big, it can do quite a lot. So it's my you have a lump of metal that is highly energetic, and when you slam them together, you're getting this big bright light. And like atomic bombs are obviously not running on fusion. Most of them are, fusion bombs, thermonuclear bombs are fusion. But even the older nuclear bombs, the ones that just use uranium or plutonium, essentially, you might remember the mushroom cloud, but the thing that you don't hear people talk about a lot is the fireball. Like as the nuke is detonating, you'll see a fireball rising through the sky. It's almost like a miniature sun that is very short lived. And so these are stars that are just beginning to form. And as a parent star, as various stars start to form, they do create these jets or like, and the scale is ridiculous. Like I wish I had a picture that had like a line on it telling us how many kilometers or how many parsecs we were looking at right now. That would be kind of cool. I didn't think of that until just now, but as stars are igniting, as they're beginning their fusion, there's going to be currents of air, just like in our solar system, that particles from other places are trying to come into our solar system, but they bounce off of the particles from the sun. So the sun is essentially repelling particles that are coming towards it, shielding us from maybe other types of particles or pushing them away, almost creating like the wake of a boat, so to speak. But anyway, what got this picture was taking separate pictures using different filters, whether they be color filters or hydrogen filters or even infrared filters, and then taking multiple pictures in each filter, stacking them, and then doing that with each successive filter before finally combining them to get your color composite here. So that's the wide shot. Now we're going to take a look at the JWST version, and that if you have a question about it, I can show you that later. Okay, there we go. That one took a while to load, by the way. Some of these are enormous. I love that they let you download some of these like sometimes you'll download a picture that's 100 megabytes. It's like, what? A picture? 100 megs? Gee whiz. Now, this one here, the picture we were looking at before is everything from here to I think around here. And then everything down here is new, or at least new to me, right? So we're gonna take a good look at the bottom part because that looks really cool right there. But before we get there, I just love the amount of stars that they got on this one. And one of the things that's annoying that might annoy some people is the diffraction spike pattern on JWST. I'd imagine that there were some trade-offs that were considered, and at the end of the day, they are aesthetically pleasing. Some people might find them distracting. Essentially, what you'll notice is that the stars in the background don't exhibit those diffraction spikes as much. It's just that in order to get the picture of this stuff here, you got to keep that shutter open for like multiple minutes at a time. That's funny. Looks like a mantis. You got to keep that shutter open for multiple minutes at a time. On the ground, the telescope has to move to counteract the Earth's rotation. In space, they're using gyroscopes to kind of keep the Hubble on target. And there's like times where you'll take 20 hours and it might happen across separate nights. But the point is that whatever settings you're using to eke out detail from the dusty cloud here, it tends to be a bit excessive for the stars. So the brighter stars get the diffraction spikes, but this is how we get this lovely detail here. And this is 100% zoom right here. We're not zoomed out, we're not zoomed in. This thing is probably, compared to my screen, goes from here. Like, I don't know, I could probably print out a cool poster of it. But let's get to that bottom area there.
Okay, I have a question. So
Sure.
without atmosphere or gravity or whatever, how do cloud formations, like dust formations, how does that form into this? Like, that's incredible. How does it do that without like atmosphere and stuff to make it hold together or something?
Well, as I understand it, and the key word is as I understand it, I don't want to say this is the definitive here, but essentially just anything in space produces anything that has mass or weight to it, density that is solid is going to have, gravity. And a lot of times there's like a lot of misnomers about gravity, but technically gravity from any individual object can go on indefinitely. But like a radio signal or like a loud, a low spoken voice in a loud room, you're going to find out, like, if you're in Grand Central Station alone and you make a noise, you might have a friend on the other side who can hear you. Now you add a bunch of other people talking, and that's not going to happen even if you're yelling at the top. Maybe if you're yelling at the top of your lungs, but even then, people might not hear you. So, in the absence of a stronger source of gravity, or if you're not close to, like essentially the further away from something big you go, the more influence something closer to you is going to have on you. So, if I'm near the Earth's gravity is going to trump the moon's gravity. But if I'm near the moon, even though the Earth and the sun are bigger than the moon, being near the moon, I'm going to be influenced by the moon's gravity. So whatever, groups of gas you have, the gas alone can have that weight. Now, what causes the gas to decide to go to one place or another? Not really sure, but it's a whole cycle, right? You got like star formation from the elements and gas that are floating around out there. I'm sure there's plenty of debate, on what was the origin there. Some people would say, oh, it was definitively the Big Bang. Now there's people who are saying that, oh, but James Webb data is showing that there's galaxies that are older than we expect them to be. And my thing is like, well, it's not, I don't think I get it's an exact science based on the data you have, but your mathematics is only as good as the data you have. And so I expect a lot of revision to happen in the coming years. But essentially, I don't think a Big Bang is incompatible with God, but I do find that some science heads definitely want to throw it in people's faces as if like it's their way or the highway in that context. So bottom line is that if I understand correctly, or the idea is that we had these elements already floating around after the Big Bang or after whatever early event. Some people believe in a cyclical Big Bang, that the galaxy, the sun, not the universe expands. At some point, it snaps back like a rubber band. Everything gets compressed all at once, and that act of compression produces new, fresh elements. So when everything explodes again, you now have like this spread of elements. And just by virtue of having a congregation, a group of more elements in the same place at the same time, they're going to coalesce together. So that's the gist of it. So once you do actually have a star, that one star is going to do its thing, right? That one star is going to, my mouse has a sideways scroll wheel. There we go. And once you start having a few stars doing their thing, and other stars start to form, you can have mixed gravitational fields, almost like weather, where you have things that go from an area of high pressure to low pressure. But in this particular case, it's mainly that the gas is there, that you have pockets of gas that are denser than others, and that density feeds into more density, pulling in more matter. And then once you have stars forming, yes, that star has its gravity, but it also has a tendency to eject stuff. It has a tendency to push stuff. And this whole area is basically influenced by the stars that are born within, the stars that already exist within at this point, just kind of blowing the dust around. And the dust that comes from one star or the particles from one star might then get pulled in by another gravitational body. But unfortunately, I don't have a clearer answer than that. I'll be honest with you.
Okay. But that's still, I mean, I'm just awestruck. I don't even know what to say. This is incredibly amazing and beautiful. That
Now,
I
I do want
mean,
to know. I do want to note one thing though, is that a lot of these things look pretty spectacular if you go to a place that's very dark, right? Like if you go with a telescope and you use your eyes. But in my area, the light pollution definitely, gets in my way. So I definitely have to like use filters and collect the colors separately instead of all at once. But there may be a little bit of creative liberty, right? A little exaggeration. The main thing about the Hubble, actually, this is not so much like they're not really messing around so much, but it's the color palette they use. So let me explain. This is really relevant here. So I'm gonna just do SHO RGB versus SHO color palette. So they have this thing called the Hubble color palette. Hubble color palette. And remember I told you I use the red, green, and blue. Excuse me. I use red, green, and blue filters separately. Well, let me show you now. This company has these filters that they have beta spectrum HA filter. And okay, there we go. So when I shop for filters for the camera, we got red, green, and blue, but we also have narrowband filters. So notice that right here, we're gonna save this picture because this picture is very relevant to like what I'm gonna show you next. So now we're gonna do beta narrowband filters, which is what you would use to get like that detail from the nebula there. And if I could just get that there, now we're gonna get hopefully they got the whole set. Hoping they have the whole set, but okay, we'll click on this one here. I was hoping they'd have the whole set in one picture. This will have to suffice. So as an example, this filter is the hydrogen alpha filter, I hope. Is it? Yes, good. Okay, fantastic. So hydrogen alpha, you'll notice that like basically regular color, they call these broadband filters. So these are literally the colors that you see with your eyes, give or take a few nanometers. And so that's the red you see, that's the green you see, and there's a dip in here to kind of help manage light pollution. So artificial light, like high street lights, come up in the blue or green area. So this kind of allows us to cheat and not collect light that we don't want by having a little gap between red and green right over here. But the point is that now hydrogen, the ionized hydrogen light that we talked about that come from stars that allow us to get pictures of the Eagle Nebula, that comes from a narrowband filter. And for reference, it's essentially a tiny little sliver of the color red. So while red would be like an area that goes from like, I think 600 and 700 nanometers. Yep, 600 and 700 nanometers. So essentially we're using the telescopes to tune into these wavelengths, almost like we're tuning into radio stations, except they're light. So anyway, by getting this, what we're doing is we could take really long exposures. Like we could have that camera shutter open for 10 minutes at a time. And since we're not getting any blue, we're not getting any green, we're not getting the rest of the color red, we're able to avoid receiving that unwanted light. And this is what allows us to eke out that extra detail. And forgot why I was explaining this. But you get the idea. It's just, it's something we can expand on at any point in time if you ever have me on again. But why was I answering
definitely.
that?
You're
But you
definitely
get the
coming
idea.
back.
So long story short, yeah. So like I remember the Hubble color palette. Okay, so basically like you would have this, but then down here we're gonna see we got O3. O3 is like a color that's bluish green. It's like mostly blue, but it's like a bluish green. And O3 is sort of like ionized oxygen. And then you have S2. So you got what I use on my telescope, I use hydrogen alpha, O3, and S2, which is basically ionized sulfur, electrically charged elements of sulfur out there in the cosmos. And what's annoying about sulfur is it's a shade of red. Like you can see right here. Now, what is this color bar down here? You ever see the Pink Floyd album where they have the prism in front of the light and it splits off into different colors? That's basically like when you take sunlight or white light, that piece of glass will split the colors into their separate colors, or split the light into the separate colors that make the white light. And so, using that same spectrum, that same rainbow, so to speak, we're basically lining up with this ruler up here, known as the EM spectrum. And so, bottom line is that when we get light of this particular shade of red, we know it's hydrogen. And if it's off a little bit, we can, real astronomers can calculate the difference in redshift. But the idea is that the point I'm getting at is that imagine you're a scientist and you want to measure how much hydrogen and how much sulfur is inside of this nebula. Now, the problem is if you're using the red and blue, using the two different shades of red for hydrogen and sulfur, you're gonna have a hard time, telling hydrogen and sulfur apart. So you're not gonna get, good science done. You're not really gonna get any science done. So how do they do it? Well, we need to get a picture of the Hubble color palette because that's gonna tell us what colors they use. Because I couldn't remember, but I think I have a guess. I think it's yellow, red, something like that. So you had this nice, friendly astronomer guy, and he did a little article showing a camera that cost more than my leg, or arm, or arm and leg. And so right there, see there's a graph once again showing O3 is this greenish blue, and hydrogen alpha and S2 are like basically just two shades of red. So how does the Hubble color palette remedy that? Well, the Hubble color palette remedies that by allowing sulfur to remain red. But now we're swapping out the color red, which is normally for hydrogen alpha. And to be clear, hydrogen alpha is basically a deep red, almost like a ruby red. It's a very specific shade of red. Now they're swapping out the red with yellow. So they're just telling it in software, represent these shades of red as shades of green. And that alone gives them a head start on being able to differentiate sulfur from hydrogen. And then same thing with O3. O3 is a bluish green. So now we got a straight up blue for O3, which is not really a stretch. The biggest bending of reality is choosing green for hydrogen alpha. And I'm not sure why they would not just pick a different color for sulfur instead. I'm sure there's like a logical reason for it. But, if it was up to me, I would say let's keep hydrogen red and make sulfur some other color. But maybe they wanted to make sure that there was like a complete, difference between those colors. Maybe someone was just like, it looks prettier. And so, yeah, the green we're seeing, I believe if I'm comprehending right, if this is using the Hubble color palette, which was in that article, and where is it? Because I want to see, I'm already forgetting what color is which. Well, anyway, so we got maybe O3 surrounding this. Well, actually, no, wait. Does James Webb use the Hubble color palette? I don't know. But bottom line is that the hydrogen alpha is probably the stuff that's shining out over here. Let's see. The red would be the sulfur in here, I guess. And then the green might be some O3 there. Honestly, I'm kind of guessing. That's going to be something worth analyzing. I should do my homework on that next time. But, bottom line is that the goal is not just get a pretty picture, but to determine, like, in a given area of a given size, how much of a given element there. Because if the scientists or the astronomers or the professional astronomers are trying to get answers to various questions, it's like, okay, well, how much mass of hydrogen does it take to form a star? Things of that nature. Or like, what does a star look like before it forms, or what does a star of a given type look like before it forms? And one of the things you'll see that's really cool is I should definitely add this to my list for next time, is like when galaxies collide. And what's cool is you'll see like pictures from Hubble of galaxies at different states of combination, and you'll realize, so right now we can look at different galaxies and see what they look like right now. But using different pictures of galaxies in different places that resemble each other, they're able to find consistency in order to determine that this galaxy we see now was probably formed by a spiral galaxy colliding into another spiral galaxy at this angle. And so a lot of inferencing going on. And people get wrapped up in stuff like dark matter. Dark matter is basically just a variable for stuff that basically fixes the equation. You do a mathematical equation. You say, hey, things should behave like this. and they don't. So someone goes, okay, we'll put a placeholder in the equation. That's as far as I'm concerned, what that is. But yeah, it's beautiful. I love this new detail on the picture here. I mean, like I've never seen that part before, but like one of the things that captivates me is just getting these like nebulosity and these cloud details. So what I'm going to show you real quick before I pass the mic to you, because I know I've taken a lot of time here, and I really appreciate you allowing me to, speak like this much. I'll show you just something I captured recently. I think that, I should at least show you what I'm working on,
Yeah.
and then I'm all set after that. But recently, I was taking pictures of the cigar galaxy, and the cigar galaxy should be in two places. Here we go. Oops, wrong folder. There we go. So today's date, yesterday's date. Oh, that's February. What year is it? Oh, that's 2024. 2025. Okay, here
That's
we
why I was
go.
running late. I was on time from last year. That's why.
Okay, so this was taken on a night when I think I had like good weather, but something was out of focus and I had work the next morning, so I just rolled with it. But this is exactly what I was talking about. These pictures are taken with the red, green, and blue filters. So you can see over here it says green on the text file here. So these are the green pictures. And then this would be the luminance filters. So essentially we take pictures in red, green, and blue, but we also take pictures that go through a clear filter that doesn't block out any one color. It lets in all three at once. And we mainly do that because when we stack the other three colors together, we can use the white light image to kind of make everything pop out a little bit more. And the convenience for us today is that that picture is probably going to give us the most detail compared to other individual layers. So this is a M81 and M82 respectively. Bode's galaxy, named after a guy named Bode or Bodie. And this is the cigar galaxy. And what's cool about the cigar galaxy is it looks like a cigar. I mean, that's a cigar right there. I mean, I love that. I just love that. And this is blurry, but
Wow.
that's a cigar, all right. So there's that. And then we got different. There we go. That one's there. And then what's weird is this one here. We take a picture in the hydrogen filter because there's actually red light coming out in the middle here, almost bursting out like a fanning pattern. And that's an example of like where like we don't see it in red, blue. We don't see it in blue or green as clearly. But if you use a hydrogen filter, you could run the camera for longer. You could soak in the photons for longer, run a longer exposure, and now you start eking out that detail. So let's see. There's gonna be LRGB hydrogen, and hopefully that's hydrogen. Yes, that is hydrogen. So let's hope. All right. So yeah, these came out blurry and out of focus that day, but you can see how like we don't see the rest of the cigar here. We just see that little white area there. So that's essentially what we're using. We're combining all of those together and it ends it. Now we get the whole cigar in color and we get the bursting out part. And I believe I have that somewhere in the, like recent days. Lately, what I started doing is automating it in such a way where like I can like, usually this one night was bad for the guiding, I call it. The guiding is what keeps us on target. But generally when you have good guiding, my camera can now switch between filters. The software can switch between filters, autofocus with each filter, because whenever you change the filter, it's slightly out of focus. So you have to, basically like refocus every time. On a cloudy night, that's a cloudy night. Yeah, light transmission was doomed. This picture is more in focus, but the light transmission is non-existent here. And sometimes like what I'll do is I'll take pictures on a cloudy night and I'll just scan. Oh yeah, see, it got darker right there. And sometimes like I'll be able to discard the bad ones, keep the good ones, and combine the best ones. But that's the gist of it. Any questions?
That's amazing. I'm just still blown away by all this really cool stuff. Like you're definitely going to have to come back multiple times, and I'm sure I'm not going to have any trouble convincing Shaun to join back in on this because this is amazing.
I appreciate that, and I'll definitely come back a little more organized. Because really, what I wanted to do was organize it like the browser tabs lined up and all the relevant stuff, and I kind of hit into a monkey wrench with that part. But I do have like on cloudy nights that we have coming up this week. Like right now, I had to put the cover on the scope because it's going to snow today. And oh man, I'm so glad I bought an outdoor cover. Let me tell you, that makes things so much easier than disassembling it, reassembling it. Soon I'll be able to get the telescope to aim itself. That would be nice. I really want the telescope to aim itself so that I can just kind of go to bed, give it a list of targets, and wake up to like a folder containing quality imagery. Wow, that's a bad picture. I mean, there's nothing in there. There's nothing in there. But no, we're gonna find. Oh, I see. That's the other folder, right? I want to find the North America Nebula because I think it's just one decent final example there. Oh wait, am I on the wrong computer? Yeah, I said, am I on the wrong computer? Not even kidding. Sometimes it's easy to mix up which computer you're on.
Mhm.
Wait, is this okay? This is the backyard computer. This is the computer I'm sitting in front of right now. And when I open up, oh, there it is. Okay, it was on my left monitor. Got it. Oh, yeah, there we go. That's why I couldn't see it. All right. So just give you a
Okay.
quick example of like a standalone image in a single filter of a nebula. And this is something that big file computer's like, yeah, I'm going to load. Give me a minute. Poor computer. I'm sorry, computer. I don't mean to overwork you like that. I've never seen it do this before, actually. That's kind of funny. Let's just close the app and try it again. I'm going to crash it. Yeah, we're gonna crash it. Crash. Go. There we go. Okay. Now we're gonna do that. I think what happened is I opened up like the same picture like 20 times and confused it. I'm gonna give it one more shot before we give that. But you got the idea. And just for reference, the other pictures we have, this is like
Wow.
gravitational lensing. So one of the weird things they do now, whether a black hole is a black hole or whether a black hole is just a really heavy star or a really high region of great gravity, whether it's a star or a black hole, you will see gravitational lensing at times. And what that means is that essentially gravity is bending the light from a more distant area. And so one of the weird things you'll get is either what they call Einstein rings or rings where you have like 1, 2, and 3 of the same star surrounding a gravitational area. And in this case, you actually see what looks like a spiral galaxy being warped, being bent and bent here. And so sometimes you get like nerds who are smarter than me, and they will figure out how to unfold it or fold it back into the correct shape, and they'll be able to take advantage of gravitational lensing sometimes to see things that are just otherwise too far away to take a look at. So I just found that to be interesting. And our luck, the picture I opened up is this one here that was grainy. So no fun.
This is just absolutely, this is amazing. Like wow. I mean, I knew you were going to bring good stuff, Ronnie, because I've seen your live streams before, but this is great. I'm so excited. I love this. This is good. You're definitely coming back. That's not even a question.
Well, I appreciate that. Now it looks like I'm having a little trouble opening them individually. Next time I'll probably just have to queue up the pictures locally on this computer instead of trying to open them over the network. It's being a little uncooperative right now. But if there's any questions or anything else that either of you would like to
Wow.
see, let me know.
I'm looking at that and it reminds me of like those things in caves, and it's just like patterns that you just see under
Mhm.
the earth and in space. Like just, what I think Troy had to leave already, but Troy and his fractal patterns. Well, here you go. You got
Well, yeah.
stalagmites and stalactites reflected as a pattern in space.
I was also seeing like what reminded me of fractal patterns when I was looking at the diffraction spikes from James Webb. It just kind of reminded me of that too, and it's at least the radial symmetry of that.
That's incredible. They're everywhere. And it's just amazing. So, wow. Thank you, Ronnie. This is beyond what I even was expecting from you. And I've seen some pretty cool stuff. And so, yeah, this is amazing, and definitely already looking forward to scheduling to having you come back, because actually I think we should get him on 3M and on Faith Unaltered too, and come do this. I think this would be awesome to have on those channels also. So that would be amazing, because this is cool stuff. This is really, really cool stuff. So
I always have fun sharing it.
that's amazing. I don't know if it looks like Fire King's having issues with I don't know why his messages aren't showing up, but if anybody has any questions, it'd be a really good time to ask them. Shaun, thoughts? First of all,
The coolest thing about this, because I just expected you to come with some photos. The coolest thing about this was that you got to show us the process. And it's like, that is just infinitely more impressive when we see how much work goes into it, how much, program thinking, how much time and how much science goes into everything. It's like, it's not just a picture, but this is like the end result of hours and hours and days of labor. And it's like, dude, that's just mind blowing. And it makes me appreciate it so much more.
Mm-hmm.
And same here, because like when I got into this, I thought I was just going to be taking pictures. I was coming on to the forums going, I would like to take a mosaic of the sky. So, you take like 5 pictures next to each other.
Right.
And people like shutting me down and downvoting the comment. I'm like, okay, I get it. But like, I'm like, I don't get it. Then when I finally got into taking my first pictures, I'm like, oh, I see now. Now I see. If you do a mosaic, one picture is going to be out of contrast with the other picture. Now you got to normalize them. It's just a whole routine. It's not cut and dry. But the weirdest thing I found was like, I didn't think I was going to be buying a black and white camera. I just thought I'd be using color cameras, a digital SLR. And I did start out doing that. Then I was like, oh, I see. You got to cool the camera down. But then I'm like, I didn't think I was going to be doing the colors separately. That blew my, you when you get into this hobby, and I don't recommend it. I mean, it's a fun hobby to some extent, but I don't recommend it. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not for people who are married, who have wives that check how much money they spend. What you should do is buy your astronomy equipment before you get married, and then just accumulate everything. Because like then you don't have to have that discussion. But like it's a running joke on the forum is like where people like go, I gotta ask my wife if I could buy this new piece of kit, and I respect, of course, it's important that have that talk about capital purchases with your spouse. Of course, you shouldn't just go behind your wife's back and. But there's like a lot of jokes about like different telescopes, like like when people buy the Takahashi, the Japanese telescopes that are just like obscenely expensive. It's like there's a lot of funny jokes about how that goes for some people. But I was hoping.
Hilarious.
I'm so disappointed I didn't see the picture I was looking for. Oh wait, hey, there we go. Okay, we're gonna do this one. There we go. Now it's working. So just to give you a quick reference, this is a picture of the North American Nebula taken on a hydrogen alpha filter. And we start out with, right now I'm doing what we call stretching the histogram, which basically just giving us like brightness where we want it. And we could even darken it up, or at least give the illusion that I'm darkening up the background. Make the histogram a little bit narrower while we're stretching it.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, this would be the basis of a single, exposure that would go into an image stack. This is where we would take dozens of these, and if this was done in a hydrogen alpha filter, then I know I got to map that to the color red. So all the white and gray become shades of red instead. And after you stack them, you might say, okay, well, now the stars aren't popping out right. So you're going to take the stars with the red, blue, and green filter. You're going to stack those into color. And ironically, the only final image product that I set aside today, it's not like I set it aside so much as I have it on my wallpaper. So after we minimize 100 things, I'll show you. But this one here is, this is tiled. So just to mention, the picture ends right where my mouse pointer is sliding here. This is like just the same picture being duplicated across my wallpaper. I believe this was either M80, I forgot, M31 or M5. I'm making up numbers here, but it's one of these globular star clusters. And a globular star cluster is exactly what it looks like. It's a group of stars, or sometimes it's a chance of alignment. One of the things that I was learning about while using an app like Space Engine, which is like this 3D simulator of space app here, was that sometimes like you'll be looking at like a star cluster and you'll go and you'll fly into the star cluster, and some star clusters are like right there. That looks like a star cluster right there. So we're gonna visit that star cluster real quick and just see is that a star cluster? And we can click on it maybe. Can I turn on my heads up? Yeah,
that's incredible. I just want to appreciate just that view for a second. Like that just by itself is amazing.
And yeah, this is the cluster M44. It says up here. So right now I'm 500 light years away from it in this simulated view. And one of the things that I find weird, I'm gonna hit the go button so that it flies us into it properly. So we'll give that a second to fly us in.
This is like, Shaun, the closest we're gonna get to being on a spaceship right here. This is pretty cool. I love this.
So right here, there we go. It's easing us in. Now this one is actually a globular star cluster or a star cluster, but a lot of times, or many times, I've noticed that just because I could see something that looks like a star cluster in the distance. Here, let me just turn off the brightness a little bit. There we go. Just because I could see this chance alignment of just because I can see this from Earth doesn't always mean that in 3D it's going to look like this. Like this one happens to look like this in 3D, yes, but in some cases, it'll be a chance alignment, meaning that you'll have just like maybe from really far away, you have some stars that are closer to you that are medium brightness, and you have a few stars that are extremely bright but really far away. So looking at it from our perspective, it'll look like they're all grouped together into a globular cluster. But if you measure the distances, then you realize, oh no, these are not all in the same place. In this case, they happen to be there. And one of the things that makes it possible for us to see so many stars is I have something set up where I downloaded pictures from what they call the Gaia catalog, and it's basically a satellite or a probe called the Gaia mission, and essentially it measures stellar distances. One of its main jobs is measuring how far away various stars are from us and how far away we are from various stars. And using that information, I could represent them in 3D. So I was able to download those additional stars into this app to give us a representation of that. And so this is our solar system, just real quick. Oh, it doesn't let me rotate. That's too bad. Okay, I can't rotate right now, unfortunately. Maybe I have to close the PlayStation app.
Pretty
I hope it
cool.
lets me rotate. Okay, now it's just zooming in on its own. All right, I broke it. I broke it. Well, we're just gonna do this real quick anyway. We're gonna force it to zoom out. Oh, okay, that's boring. I don't want to see that. I want to see this mode here. Okay, so unfortunately, I can't rotate it right now. But essentially, what we're seeing here is we are 12 light years away from Earth, 8 light years away from Earth. Okay, so Alpha Centauri and Proxima Centauri are our two nearest stars at about 5 light years away, a little bit less, 4.3. And then the next one is Barnard star. It's about 7 light years, about 6 light years away. And then we got the one from Star Trek, Wolf 359. And then we get a couple of other ones that what the heck is oh yeah, it's gonna be here, Tau Ceti. And there's a few other stars in between here. But my point in conveying this is that as we zoom out, we'll start to see stars that have weird numbers after them. And those are the Gaia catalog stars that aren't normally listed by default. But I mainly enjoy looking at stars that are within 30 light years of us. It got stuck on rotation. Yeah, so what happens? I closed the thing that controls the controller, and yeah, that happens. But you guys get the idea. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff. I think we have an idea. Now I have an idea of what you guys enjoy seeing, what you might be interested in. So I think I get, with the time allotted in the future, I think I could definitely line up something nice for you guys. But that was just a brief example of, what one of these guys would look like, if you were able to rotate around it, if you had measurements of everything being by it. But I wanted to be clear that just because it looks like this from our perspective doesn't mean that those stars are in the same cluster. They could very well just be a chance alignment.
That's just, Ronnie, I had high expectations and you just blew me away, exceeding those like massively. This is just seriously impressive. I am so I love this. You are definitely coming back multiple
I
times.
appreciate that.
And that's amazing because this is just incredible. Like oh man, I don't even know. That's just wow. Like, all right. So can you pull up, we were back where we were looking at the star cluster and you could see those like dust cloud looky thingies in the background, like on the side.
Was it this one or was it the other one?
No, isn't that thing you were at when we were flying around and you were looking
yeah.
at was it a star cluster? And then you could see from the one view, you could see the dust cloud things in the background because that.
Yeah, we can do that. I just got to open the app. Is when I messed up my controller to fix the way it was working, I closed it and opened it. So we're going to reload that real quick.
Okay. So while we're doing that and thinking back, Shaun, to everything that we've seen, first of all, what are your thoughts beyond this is amazing. Like,
man, I can't say it any better than the Bible, man. The heavens declare the glory of God. Like, it's just, what else do you say? It's so beautiful. Crazy. I mean, I'm lost for words at just the magnitude and the beauty of what's out there.
And I think too, this makes me think about how we are so amazingly fortunate to live in a time where we could benefit from science that started in pursuit of understanding God better. And look at what we get. I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing and amazing to me. And while Ronnie's trying to figure that out and get that back up, even just the picture that you've got up there. I mean, and I'm thinking about like going back very, very beginning, Genesis 1, and you've got God, this beautiful picture story of God bringing order to chaos. And even some of this, which looks like with dust clouds and stars flung across the universe, it still can look like this beautiful dance of ordered chaos. But, you know, it's still, God has brought order to all of it. It's absolutely like just thinking about Genesis 1, looking at these pictures, Shaun, what think I can't even, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of like you said, God taking this what seems to be chaos and making order out of it. But when I look at this, I don't see chaos at all. Like I see just perfectly ordered, right? Like I mean, it just you wouldn't change a thing. It's like it's the most beautiful painting that man's mind could ever comprehend, and it's just like it's right out there. And then when you think about things like what Ronnie had said about light pollution and what it's done, it's like, you know, the artificial light that we created has blinded us from the lights that God gave us. And
Yeah.
it's like that's just ridiculous that you know, I understand the reason and the purpose for it and being able to be safe at night and drive, but it's like, you know, it's almost like they've taken our birthright to be able to
Mm.
look up at the stars and see the story. You know, I mean, even the constellations, right? Like the stories that go along with the stars. I
Mhm.
mean, these are stories from the earliest days of man, and so, you know, just as much as we made those stories as the human race, we looked at them and we assigned these stories and hung these different narratives on the hooks that are the constellations. Uh, in much the same way, they also made us because we grew up learning these stories and associating them with those stars, and to take that from us, uh, you know, by creating artificial light and light pollution, and things like that, where we can't just go out in our backyard and look up at the heavens and see all of this beauty. I mean, you might be able to isolate, you know, like the Big Dipper, Orion's Belt, or something like that, but really only the super bright prevalent stars. But like seeing things like the night sky from like Chile, you know, where they're up on a mountain and they're looking up and you can see all the gas clouds and things spread across the space. It's like, oh man, to be able to see that with my own eyes, just
It reminds me,
that would be that would be so awesome.
a
Mm.
while back, they had a power outage in like California or LA or something like that, and people for the first time saw stars that they never saw before. They saw the Milky Way, because when you look at the Milky Way from inside our galaxy, and the app is almost done loading. Hopefully, we'll see. If it doesn't load, I'll let you know. But I think it's loading. I had to reload it twice. But one of the things I want to find is on my own YouTube channel. I do have pictures that I actually took of the Milky Way in upstate New York, where the light pollution is much, much lower. And
Mhm.
it was surprising because, like, I didn't think I could just take my camera, my phone, put it on the floor, and point it up in the sky and get a picture. But that's exactly what happened. There it is. So, for reference, like, this is like, using a phone camera on like a 30-second exposure, nothing too fancy, just about what the camera could do using the normal app. And we could see like that you got the galactic dust cloud within our own galaxy, you got the dark spots, got these lighter spots where there's more
Mm.
stars congregated. Oh, apparently a meteorite struck through the sky. I didn't even see that before. Huh. And you can see just it's at different angles. Just every time I pick the phone up, I didn't know I could remotely control my camera with the pen on my phone. So, there's that. But I put it on I put it on a 5-second timer, and then I put it on the ground so that the vibration of me touching the phone subsides while it starts. So in some pictures, the stars are oblong, but when people saw this during the power outages in LA, they're calling the 911. They're like, "Hey, we're getting chemical attacks from Russia here." They're like really scared, and they're like, "No, no, no." They had to figure out what was going on. Like, no, no, wait, that's just the stars. That's what they look like without the city lights. And like they were getting a lot of calls about it, or a decent amount of calls about it too.
Wow.
But yeah, I got this progress bar at 50%, and usually I get impatient. I'll tell it to stop, and I'll open it twice. But I'm not sure if doing it a third time will help or hurt it. I'm gonna do it a third time, but I'll be honest, it may not load. So we're gonna just see what happens. I'm gonna try to open it again and take a chance with that. But trial and error,
That
right?
that reminds me of when we used to live in Alaska
Ooh.
back in the day, and there was a few times during the winter when we were there, and my husband would wake me up at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He's like, "Get up, we got to go." And I'm like, "What in the world? It's 3 o'clock in the morning." But we drove out to Eklutna Lake, which is like out past all the city lights, and you could see the northern lights
Ooh.
in that. Without that light, oh my goodness. I mean, it was like neon waving, and it was just the ripples. It was just, oh, it was so absolutely beautiful. And in the city, it was just so, yeah, so dampened by the city lights. So that's a really good point. But it just, I mean, this is just amazing stuff to be able to, and how disconnected we are from creation with all that, you're right, with the light pollution and stuff, to not sit and like, oh, it just, and even those pictures of how stars form, that just reminds me of this, the bringing order to chaos. God is still continuing to bring order to chaos by pulling stars together. It really does make you have a whole new, I'm gonna have to go back and read Genesis 1 again after we get done, because this is just so amazing. And if you think like the end of the book of Job, Shaun, as we've gone through this whole story of Job is suffering, and his lovely friends are trying to help him, and that doesn't go well. And finally, Job takes his case to God directly, and Job in vision language gets pulled into what I can only imagine looks like some of these pictures that we've been looking at. And Job is there, like that picture, standing there. Could you imagine like standing in the middle of those pillars, having a conversation with the divine? That just blows my mind. When you think about Job standing there looking at that, asking God, why am I suffering? Like I can't, it just, I have to go read Job again now too, because like, I can't even imagine and in your relationship with God, to be able to be standing in this and still ask, and God is answering, look at what I have done. It just, it takes a whole new meaning to the whole answering back to Job, not how dare you, who are you, oh man, that you would question me. It is this, if you don't think that by looking at all of this, that I control all of this, I have ordered all of this, that if I can't order all of this, that I can't care for you. Like it's showing like how much is spectacular in the universe, and I still care for you in your life. Me and my less than puff of smoke existence matters to God, who has done that. I mean, that blows my mind. It absolutely does.
I agree. I haven't read the Book of Job in a while. It's been a while, but well, it's been a while since I was in catechism class. But of course, they'd have us read a lot there.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead,
But
Shaun.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm just trying to imagine, we had one guy comment in saying that it's like 90 trillion kilometers is the size of that thing. Trying to even imagine if you were near close to that, like it would be, as far as your eyes could see, you would never see the end of it. Your eyes wouldn't be able to take in, the immensity of it. You would just feel absolutely helpless and tiny. And the fact that, God orders all of this, compared that to like your life. And it's like, well, if he can do all of this in his sovereignty, well, what can he not do for you? And so it's like, you're never in a moment where he's not in control. That's crazy.
And the fact that the God who does that is intimately in relationship with me. And so he knows me better than I know myself. He knows my thoughts. He knows my heart. He knows, and he loves me because of it, not in spite of it, but because of it, because he loves me as a person made in his image. Like, it is like that. Like, I just can't even, the God who can do that cares about how my day went today. Like, that blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. That's incredible.
Is that what I think it is? Is that the Pleiades? I'm trying to remember here. No, I don't think that's the Pleiades. Let's see if we can find the Pleiades. I think you'll like that one.
That's just, I mean, my mind is already so completely blown.
All right, that's the
This-
Pleiades there.
Oh, this, you know, the 3M channel, man, they would love this over there, Shaun. They would absolutely love this.
Yeah, so sometimes I turn off the labels just so we can see what we're looking at. But the Pleiades, when we see it from Earth, is referred to sometimes as the Seven Sisters. And you can see it's got like, I think, at least 7 larger stars in there inside of this cloud of dust or luminous gas or some combination thereof. But yeah, a lot of really cool stuff there. And, you know, like, it all seems quite real. You know, I mean, I can't exactly touch this stuff. And that's why I was showing before. I wanted to show that view because this is sort of like a helpful tool for seeing like a larger simulation of what we have already observed, you know, what has already been, you know, logged, you know. So we got like the asteroids in our own solar system.
Wow.
You'll also notice this orange stuff. These are all just moons orbiting Jupiter. And in fact, I feel like that'd be like, since I couldn't show you Jupiter today, what I from my own camera, I will show you a little bit something that you might like here. Okay, so there's good old Jupiter right there. The giant gas giant. It is literally a gas giant, right? And one of the things about it is it's got these little dots next to it. Those are the moons of Jupiter. Did my thing freeze up? No, okay, it didn't. Good. And I don't even have all of the dwarf moons enabled right now. Right now, we're just looking at the major moons. So the larger moons of Jupiter and a few smaller ones. But, you know, you got the 4 big ones. So what do we have? Europa, Io, Europa, Callisto, Ganymede. Oh, wait, no, is that it? No, it's not. We want the other view. I'm just pressing random buttons on the keyboard right now. Oh, it's that one.
Shaun, can you just imagine the amount of just sovereignty it takes to keep all this going without crashing into each other? I mean, I just never cease to get amazed at just, this is incredible. Like,
so you got like, you know, like the volcanic moon Io or Europa. This is Europa right over here. You got Ganymede, which is sort of like got a shell of ice on it. In fact, they're sending a mission to Europa, I believe it was, called the Europa Clipper. And I always mix up my 2 moons here, but one of them has an icy thing. One of them has like a potential ocean. Yeah, so the outside of this is like ice, and we can see these weird like streaking patterns on it. But it's speculated there's an ocean underneath this, and that maybe there's volcanism, like hydrothermal vents that might be oases of life. We don't have any evidence of life there, but if we could find life at the bottom of our ocean, there may be hope of finding some microbial stuff here. And so before you could drill a hole into this and risk contaminating it, I believe they want to survey it with more precise equipment, you know, like scan it with radar or something like that. But that can yield some interesting results. And this is a mission where they launched a probe to fly out here, and they flew it on a Falcon rocket, a Falcon Heavy rocket, which is 3 boosters attached to each other. And they ran it in a fully disposable mode, which is, you know, typically SpaceX likes to reuse their rockets. But this time the customer, I think it was the European Space Agency, was like, nah, we want to use the entire rocket. We'll pay extra. We're going to dispose of the rocket. And, you know, although generally like what Elon and what SpaceX is trying to do is make spaceflight economical by reusing it. Because the idea of building a really large, expensive vehicle and then using it once, it's like part of what makes it expensive. You know, reusing it has certain consequences, like how much weight that you could bring a given distance. And so you have to sometimes balance it out. And if someone wants to pay that money, they can do that. But most of the time, if you're trying to send private citizens to space in the future, you're going to need to drop that cost. And so Titan is a moon of Saturn there. And you can see right over here. Now, this application sort of like simulates like 2 lighting modes. So you have HDR mode, or high dynamic range mode, which makes things look pretty and you can see the planet or the moon and the stuff around it. But when you turn off HDR mode, now you got black, because really you got a ton of sunlight reflecting off of this thing right over here. It's not going to be easy to see the stars behind it when you're staring at this. And then when you look at it from behind, well, you got the sun on the other side now. So that sunlight is going to get, as your eyes adjust to the dark, that sunlight's going to appear brighter. You get some interesting effects as a result of that. But essentially, if I turn away from the object now, oh, is that Jupiter? That's Jupiter. Oh, that's Saturn. So see how Saturn looked obscenely bright? So here's like our eyes adjusting to the stars. But if your eyes remain adjusted to the stars, it gets like that. So your eyes naturally adjust, to the brightness. And this is why when you see pictures on the surface of the moon of, the ground guys on the ground, you don't see the stars because the camera has to be adjusted for the guy on the ground. If you adjust it to see the stars, the guy and the ground around him is going to be completely washed out, super bright white, sort of like how Saturn looked a moment ago. But one of the coolest things is that from this perspective, you can see like the dust of the rings, like the extended rings that you don't normally see. And it's really just the angle and the way the light's hitting that angle, or the way to like the dust is being hit from this angle. You actually see, a simulation that shows that additional aspect. And it just kind of looks cool the way the shadows land on things. But if I turn off HDR mode, that goes away like right away. Like, so it's like on one angle, it's like, sometimes you want to see one aspect more than the other, but this does give you like that I really do like the flexibility in this application to sort of, do either
Wow.
thing. And yeah, that time I think it's maladjusted now. Oh wait, I gotta hit the button again. Yeah. So yeah, but you get the idea. And then you can see like as we get into the rings, you'll see like, like moons somewhere in there are moons. And so briefly what I'll do is we're gonna turn on our dwarf planets just so we can actually see them. Boom. So now we have, in addition to like the normal major moons, you see like we got this whole swarm of things orbiting Jupiter. Those are the dwarf moons. Those are moons that are ranging from the size of like asteroids to big rocks to, various sizes, kilometers, 100 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 2 kilometers sometimes. And if we fast forward time just for kicks, you'll see like, you'll get dizzy if I zoom in on it. So I probably shouldn't, but you can see like, like how some of these have a slower orbit. So we can slow down time a little bit.
That's crazy. Like, that's amazing. Wow.
And so really like when sometimes my friend goes, what makes all this stuff keep moving? To me, it actually would be a larger mystery if it stopped moving. Like whatever could stop, the thing that would stop the Earth from spinning would be cataclysmic to us. Like I don't want to know what would happen if you stopped the Earth spinning. Like you maybe get an earthquake and maybe like I don't even know. Like it'd be a pretty interesting question. Sort of like if you had a square planet, a cube-shaped planet, you would have tons and tons of earthquakes until that planet shook itself back into a sphere, or within a reasonable shape akin to one. But once these things are in motion, they only stop, if something's to slow them down. And things sometimes interfere. You get a large asteroid passing through an area where it's not welcomed, and it might throw things off a little bit. But luckily we're very fortunate that Jupiter is there, because Jupiter seems to like pull a bunch of asteroids in a different direction, or at least force asteroids to not come exactly to us, which is tremendously helpful, as you can imagine. I mean, like it'd be super annoying if we got regular asteroid visits, right? I mean, I would hope you guys would find that annoying. Would you guys find that fun?
I don't. Well, as long as I didn't get hit on the head.
Oh yeah, true. Beautiful. It would be beautiful. The meteor showers, though, right?
Yeah, that would be pretty amazing. But I wouldn't want them to land on me or my house or my car or somebody that I know. That wouldn't be cool. But
yeah,
I mean, this is just absolutely. Shaun, this is reminding me of Psalm 139 as you're thinking about that whole, where he says, oh my goodness, such knowledge is too wonderful for me and too lofty for me to attain. And where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? And we have this massive expanse. Like it just blows me away. What do we got here, Ronnie? This is cool. What is this?
I got you a purple planet.
Oh, yay!
This one's actually incredible. So I updated the textures, and I think this is a bit more stylized, to be completely honest with you. But essentially, like normally when you're not stylizing things a lot, what you're dealing with is the elements, right? So when astronomers measure the elements in the atmosphere, and they might do that by essentially shining the light. So they look at the star and they know based on the type of wavelengths of light, that rainbow spectrum, what elements are in that star. And then if the light from the star shines through the atmosphere of a planet such as this one here, then the difference in the color or the difference in the spectrum that you're picking up through that little sliver of atmosphere is what you're going to use in order to like essentially determine what elements are in this atmosphere. So according to this data, this particular planet, whether or not, certainly we don't have pictures this clear of this planet. Okay, to be clear, this is a
Right.
artist rendition here. But what we do know about it is, or what we have a pretty decent idea of it, is that it's got an atmospheric composition containing carbon dioxide, H2O, water, C2H2, is that methane? I'm not really sure. Don't take my word for it. N2 nitrogen and H2, which is straight up hydrogen. So you got some water there, but it's not the most breathable place apparently. So yeah, we would need one heck of an inertial dampener if Earth stopped spinning about each day. And there was talk about this during the Cold War. They wanted to use rockets to slow down the Earth's rotation so that if the Russians were shooting us with a missile, they could move our continent out of the way. So they do their science. They're like, okay, let's run the numbers. Can we do it? It's like, well, yeah, we might be able to do it, but if you do it, you're gonna burn the whole atmosphere. So it's like, yeah, not an option.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I think as we start kind of wrapping up here, because we're coming up on the 2-hour mark, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this down, and we'll kind of just like Ronnie, I can't even. I'm just, that was so absolutely mind-blowingly amazing, and we have got to get you back, and I'm going to bring you on my segment on Faith Unaltered, and I know Shaun is going to work on getting him on 3M, because this is just the coolest. I am not a sciencey nerd, but this is amazing. I love this. I'm blown away. Thank you so much, my friend. This was way beyond. I can't even. I'm honored that you agreed to come and do this. I really am.
I'm honored to be here, and I'm glad you guys I'm glad you had fun.
Oh,
and I'm glad you learned things.
Yeah, I did, but I just wrapping up final kind of thoughts here. Shaun, just first, while I'm thinking about what we're going to do for wrap up, just kind of your thinking through, especially Old Testament. And there's so much language about creation. As we go back and read through some of the Old Testament stuff, what do you even do with all this? This is amazing.
Well, so what actually strikes me the most about all this, and it was something that I was commenting on earlier, was, in modern times, the light pollution, the fact that we're so far removed from this. And that was the worldview for the people who wrote the scriptures, for the people who were living at that time. And it's like, when you take that away from us, and that's our stories, that's our nightly experience. If you take a story and you write it on a piece of pottery, you might lose it. If you draw it on a wall, an earthquake might destroy the wall. You can't take the sky away. Well, they did, but you can't take the sky away, right? That's every generation is going to look at the same sky. I mean, we're looking at stars that Alexander the Great looked at. It's like we're looking at a night sky that Jesus looked at. It's crazy. It's mind blowing. And when you remove us from that, you almost have like humanity unplugged, right? Like, we're not even experiencing the same thing anymore. I was thinking, like, when you take something that beautiful and you remove us from it, it's almost like we are like if you can imagine humanity in its correct setting. You think of something like a beautiful diamond, right? Something that's precious, a gem, and it's in a setting, and it belongs in a setting. But when you remove it from that and say it falls to the ground and it falls on gravel, unless you have a keen eye, you're just going to lose it. You'll think that it just belongs there. And I think that's kind of what's happened, is we stopped looking at the sky. We stopped being able to look at the sky. And so people just think, oh yeah, this is just what it is. This is us, right? And we're just like the beasts. But we've forgotten what setting we're in. We've forgotten what setting we belong in, to what glory we've come from. And I think, we need to understand what we were made for. And that's where those stories come in. That's where the Bible comes in. That's where all of these things come in. They tell us what we are and what we're aiming at, right? And if you don't know where you are, what you're aiming at, you can't aspire to anything, right? Because if you don't know what direction you're moving or what direction you should be aiming at, what can you possibly aspire to? And of course, there would be people saying, well, we freed you up. You can aspire to anything. But ambition without direction is anxiety. And I don't think it's, I don't think that it's any stretch of the imagination that we're the most medicated generation in history, because we don't know where to go. We don't know what is good. We're not aiming at anything. And I think a lot of that is because we've taken away what is so beautiful. And so what Ronnie's been able to do here is reintroduce us to the glory that we were originally given, and being able to look at the heavens and say, you know, that's not only are we a piece of that, but that is where what we could be. Our people are mapped onto the stars. We have stories mapping onto the stars, where, you know, ancient astronomers are mapping all of these constellations. I mean, that's, I know that they're balls of gas and dust clouds, but they're also a depiction of the mind of man. And so what we see when we look at them is a reflection of who we are. And when you take that away, we don't remember who we are. And so I think it's almost ironic. We no longer look up, but we all have devices in our hands. We're all looking down. And, you know, I think there's something to that, right? I think that that's probably a little bit more profound than I have space for right now.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that too, because like when we're not sharing those stories and looking at the sky for our maps, because life, especially in the ancient world, was very cyclical, and it was survival based, and your ability to know where the pasture lands were and when it was time to move to the next area for the winter season and the summer season and all of that story was laid out and charted in those stars, and that story was written on creation. And it just that's, and how much have we, you know, like now we turn on Google Maps or you know, Apple's, whatever they have their navigation, we turn on our navigation things on our phones, and we don't even look out the window anymore in our going somewhere in our cars. Like, we're so disconnected from the natural phenomenon around us. Like, you know, I'd be lost without. I get lost with my Google Maps. Okay, without it, I would be a complete. I would never get anywhere. It is so I have to turn it on to go to the same Target I've been going to for 10 years. Like, I am so hopeless without it. And now I'm starting to wonder how much of that is my disconnect from depending on the natural, and we just don't do that anymore. I mean, that just is it. It also, I was thinking too, Genesis 15, and God has given the promise, a covenant to Abraham, and he takes him and shows him the stars in the heavens and said, this is what will be blessed and who will be blessed through you. Like, that just looking at what we just looked at, Shaun, like that's I can't even, amazing. And that Abraham could even relay that story to whoever wrote that down is absolutely incredible. There is so much, I think, that we can perspective as we're reading the Old Testament stories, especially.
You know, it reminds me of Paul. When Paul is talking, when he's communicating, he retells the story of his people. And it's almost like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they could all say to their children, look up. This is our story, right? Like, I tell you this story. This is what God is doing here. And Paul, you know, he's always relating, you know, multiple times in the book of Acts, he's taking them through salvation history. Stephen takes them through salvation history. But it's like, I never thought about that before, that Abraham could just say, look up. This is our story. This is the promise that God has made. That's crazy. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It just hit me, and I didn't that before.
No, that's fine. And that actually, that works really well too with that thought, because, you know, Jesus himself and Paul makes a big point that Abraham is not the one who saves you, even though the promise of blessing was given to Abraham. And Abraham is in context of, look, he is reflecting back. The one who's saving you is reflected back in creation and becomes Christ himself. Like even Abraham is pointing us to Christ in those promises in that covenant. That Troy would be having an absolute field day with fractal patterns with all of this at the moment. Like the fractal patterns here, and the intertextuality, as we say in the canonical narrative, that flows through from beginning to end. And then think about this. Also makes me think about this, Shaun, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because I love the prophetic genre. It's my favorite. I'm a prophets girl. It's my favorite stuff. But you get to Revelation, and a third of the stars are swept in the cosmic war, and you're just like, that. I don't even know what to do with that imagery and just what we've seen with all of that. Like, what do you even do with that to even as a picture story? I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because my brain is like, I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some stuff like what Troy has done, where he was talking with Nico about the third of the stars relating to, I think it was the constellation Hydra, and it, a third of the stars were under the horizon or something like that. But that's just one interpretation. But trying to think of a third of the stars in the sky and billions of galaxies, and each galaxy having billions of stars, that's crazy. That's a number we can't even fathom, you know. So when you're relating to like a third of the stars, and you look and we look at like the pillars of creation, and like 90 trillion kilometers, like what? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And that's like a tiny corner of the night sky, and that's it. Just blows.
I know, it absolutely blows my mind to think about that. And as you get, I mean, so the cosmic stage for the spiritual war was started in Genesis, but it was really platformed in Joshua. Joshua really brings that out in an amazing way, that we understand it in the context of war language, because before it's just laid out in narrative and in the theme wise, but it isn't really, I don't think, we don't see it as war battle until Joshua, and they go in to take the promise, because they're reclaiming the lands from the little e Elohim. We're going to Michael Heiser here for a second, right? So the divine council is coming in, and the little Elohim given dominion over the earth is being put right back into order, and God is reclaiming all of that. But it just the cosmic scale, I can't even get my head around all of that stuff that we've just seen is included in the cosmic scale of this. Like, and our nice little Western world, we're also so disconnected from that part of the spiritual, the whatever you call it. I don't know that I have good language for it, but that just, the God of armies, and that in Hebrew, that phrase is it also both heavenly armies and earthly armies, and just the scale. I mean, I'm having trouble grappling with the scale. I really am. It's incredible. I mean, I don't know. Have they? Does anybody know? Have they figured out how big space is? Has anybody gotten some kind of a guesstimate on that?
You got like you got the upper limit of what can be seen, or like, and beyond that, like, do we know what's beyond it? So oftentimes people look to the cosmic background, microwave background, they call it. And essentially, when you look at things so far away that you can't see the light, or the light is blocked by things, you would end up using microwave radiation, or almost like using radar to pick up detail. And so, almost like using a satellite dish, you're using, like, just to give you like a very brief example here, like Oh, wrong button. Like you can actually like get these little spots. So essentially, a satellite dish is like scanning just one
Oh,
little area at a time, and it's panning
put
across.
that up there.
Oh, that works, cool. And it's just so this picture wasn't taken in one shot. It was almost like you're scanning this little square. You're measuring, is there a lot of microwave radio coming from that, or a little bit? So you give it red. Basically, the more radio you pick it up, you give it a color for each little pixel on this map. And this is like a map of everything around us and the so-called cosmic microwave background. People say, well, what would cause that much microwave energy? So that's where people would say, oh, it's the Big Bang. You know, it's the remnants of the Big Bang. And maybe it is an echo of the Big Bang, or maybe an echo of a Big Bang, one of many
Mhm.
cyclical ones. I honestly don't know. But what is the distance on this? That's the question we have here. So I'm guessing here that somewhere in here, there is a light years number here. Fluctuating temperature cosmos was about 370,000 years old. Yeah, that doesn't seem quite 13.7 billion. So if I'm reading this correctly, we've seen about 13 billion light years, 14 billion light years out, meaning the oldest light that we've seen, if I'm reading this correctly, is about that age. Now, does it go beyond that? Who knows? I mean, I don't see why it can't. I guess one of the things about James Webb that we're seeing now is that they're redoing the math and they're like, hey, we're seeing things in places that we didn't expect to see. Like we're seeing galaxies that are too young. Like we thought it would take longer for the first galaxies to form, and here we are seeing galaxies that are older. So it doesn't mean that you got to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it definitely means that we can expect revisions. And you got the anti-science crowd kind of pushing their own assertions, but at the same time, you got people, astronomers, who wrote books in the old paradigm, and now they have to either work their ideas into the new paradigm, or they might, sometimes I'm not really sure if I'm comprehending it correctly, but maybe some people are going to fight tooth and nail to protect what they wrote about so they can sell their books until they're forced to accept a new paradigm, a new reality. But I always like to, at least me, I'm not a real scientist, so I'm not obligated to be perfectly accurate. I'm not obligated to give you guys, precise results here, luckily, right? But yeah, so that's a rough sketch answer to your question.
Okay, because that's we've gone way beyond. Look, there's grass, I can touch it. Like that's about the extent of my sciencey. Science was not my thing growing up. Now I'm married to an engineer who loves all that sciencey stuff, and so
Cool.
I've been by osmosis forced to start to appreciate it. So but this is like way out of my normal wheelhouse. But I mean, so we're getting to 2 hours here, so we need to, I think, start wrapping
Yeah,
up. But
that works for me.
but yeah, thank you so much, Ronnie. And then this has been just absolutely mind-blowing. And again, I just can't even thank you enough, and definitely going to bring you back and bring you on Faith Unaltered. And I'm going to bug Nico, get him on 3M, because this is really cool stuff. I mean, this is absolutely okay. Okay, Kyle, I see. Okay, so I'm going to context this question, and we will make this the last question of the night, right? So this goes back to a long-running joke here. So this is Kyle here. So it's still for reference, which is just running gag about I don't like shrimp and crawfish. So I referred to them one time as looking like fried aliens. And so it's just been this thing. So do you guys like shrimp? Kyle wants to know.
I like shrimp, but I do understand that they are the scavengers of the ocean, and they are also arguably little sea bugs. So, I'm not gonna start eating roaches here or crickets, but I'm okay with shrimp. Clean your shrimp thoroughly, right? Remove the little line in the back of them, right? I don't like to eat the shells. I don't like when you order shrimp and they give you the whole thing whole. And it's like, oh, come on, man! Like it's a soup, man. You don't eat soup by picking away the shell and the legs. And but that being said, like I was reading a book about World War II diesel submarines, and they would go to a port in Australia, like for layover to take a break while they do maintenance and refuel and all of that. And they get a really good price on the oysters at the place. So they're eating the oysters, like, oh, great price. We're getting a lot of oysters for our money, right? Everyone's have a good meal. Now the submarine is leaving, and as they're pulling out, the Australian pilot, the guy who guides your ship out of the port, because they're familiar with the port, so they help you navigate through the rocks and all of that. the guy goes, "Oh, what's that over there? Oh, yeah, that's the guy goes, "Oh, yeah, that's a sewage ditch over there, right? Where, like a sewage outlet into the ocean." So the Australian guy's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So he's like, "What are those guys doing over there?" So the Australian guy's like, "Oh, they're picking up the oysters from the sewage outlet." So apparently, in this particular part of Australia, the oysters were found that it was very fertile, very nutritious to live in a sewage drainage outlet. And suddenly these guys go, "Oh, gee whiz, that's what we were eating and enjoying the other night." I mean, you might think twice about eating oysters if you knew that they were picked from a sewage drainage outlet. So that's what I have for you on that. But I respect and empathize with people who choose not to eat shellfish because, like I say, yeah, they're on the bottom of the floor. They're eating marine snow and anything in between. Now, I like to theorize that most of the nasty stuff goes into their shell, and I'm eating the good part, but I haven't really checked.
Hmm. Shaun, shrimp, no shrimp.
I don't eat arthropods on land or in the water.
All right, so Kyle, the vote is 2-1. No thanks on the shrimp. All right, you guys. So let's kind of just do just a couple minutes. We'll go with Shaun first, and then we'll give Ronnie a chance, and then I'll go. So Shaun, just if you can, a couple final thoughts, and where can people go if they want to see more of you on YouTube or on social media? Like, where are you at?
Yeah. So I'm always on 3M, which is Myths, Mysteries, and Majesty with Nico. So I, always there either Friday or Sunday. And then I'm going to be doing a new segment, which was first talked about in November. But life happens, so it is still coming. So be looking for that. You could also find me on Cosmic Corner. Joshua Davidson always likes to extend an invitation, and I love going on there and hanging out with those guys. And maybe Amber will have me back, and you can see me there. I don't actually have any home channel that I run or anything, but kind of a parasite jumping from channel to channel. But yeah. If you see me, click and check out St. Shaun. My thoughts on this, man, I can't believe the images that we were able to see. I can't believe the work that goes into it. I mean, I'm just so impressed with not only the setup that Ronnie was showing us, but the work that he does, and the storage files, and then being able to show us the process of how you collate those things out and then stack the images. It's just mind blowing the amount of work that goes into it, and gives me so much more respect for the images that I see. It's not just a really camera. There's so much more that goes into it, and so now when I see those images, I'll be very much more appreciative of that.
Mm-hmm. I agree, Amber. Even though I can't hear you, I totally agree.
Oh, sorry. I got hit by the mute thing too. I do that occasionally. So where can we find you? Let's throw your channel up there and let everybody.
I'm sorry. I was supposed to share my screen.
That's okay.
I got you.
Never mind. That's all right. So Ronnie,
Oh, easy. I think exactly where you can find me. You can find me on youtube.com/@DJRonnieG. And that's spelled just like that in the top. So you literally do @/DJRonnieG, and you'll get my channel. I do a Monday show on Thursdays. I call it the Monday show on Thursday to reduce confusion, because I used to have a Monday show, but I want people to know where to find me. So that's what we do. And sometimes I do it on Wednesdays, and I'll just call it the Monday show on Wednesday. But yeah, tonight around 10:45-ish, I'm gonna have Punk Waddle. He's our resident penguin, very cool penguin. He's gonna, join me, and we're gonna kind of just do random stuff. Like sometimes I make a plan and I have a very organized show, like when I talked about the recent drone sightings that we were hearing about in New Jersey. And then other times I kind of just go all over the place. And some of my, viewership, they enjoy that or don't mind it. And one or two people might have a strong comment about, like, being all over the place. To each their own, I say. But, just try to have fun and do what we sort of did here, in addition to whatever is, on the docket on any given week. Oh, and I like
Awesome.
turtles.
Yes, the turtle cam. I love the turtle cam. Right now, actually
Yeah.
in Fortnite, there's an Asian theme and there's stone turtles everywhere, and it's
Oh, that's
really cool.
cool.
So yeah, it is. There's one actually that reminds me of the Never Ending Story because the head of the turtle
Oh,
like moves up
yeah.
and down, and mouth moves, and it's like it's really cool. Anyway, that was a total side tangent there, but we do that around here. We're all about side tangents. All right, so my turn. This, I mean, I can't even. Amazing is that I can't. It's not even a good enough word. This was so much fun. I absolutely loved this. Ronnie, you did an amazing job. Thank you so much. You just blew away my expectations. I mean, they were high already because I know I've seen enough of your content to know, but I apologize for greatly underestimating how amazing a job. Like I was expecting great, and we got mind blowing. So this is great. So yeah, and then I've got boy, we got a bunch of stuff coming out. I've got tomorrow we're doing a special episode for one of Faith on Altar's channel members who asked a question about the reclaiming sacred space, and so that'll be really interesting. And then I co-host with Tyler every other week, opposite of Cosmic Corner, and we're working on a series of exploring what is ecclesia, what is the church. And I'm also co-hosting with Courtney Trotter a segment that's going to premiere next week called Hebrew Bible Breakdown, and we're going to get into Hebrew and ancient Near East and how Hebrew works and how the ancient mind thinks and how to understand the Old Testament better so that we can understand the New Testament better and the entire story better. We'll learn about scholarship and how that works and methodology and really technical, nerdy stuff that'll be, I think, a lot of fun, at least for us anyway. And then as part of the other Ecclesia series, we're doing a sub segment called Wide Open Spaces, where we're going to talk about how much different people or people in different Christian traditions actually have in common, and we're building a positive space to have good healing conversations and let's stop fighting for a little while and let's just learn to agree for a bit. And so that's what we're going to be spending the whole year doing that. So I think my friend Jamie Russell is Seventh-day Adventist, and he's going to be one of the first people on. And a friend of mine, Michelle from Force of Life Entertainment. I think you know who she is, Ronnie. She'll be there, come in and talk about her. She's an ordained minister in, I don't want to get that wrong, so I won't say which tradition she's from, so I don't want to get it wrong because I did the other day. So, but she's going to be on, and we're going to have several people coming on that segment, and just really just trying to create some goodwill and positive conversation over there. So a lot of stuff coming out, and it's going to be really good stuff. So thank you both. You both are going to be coming back, and that's not a request. You're both coming back on my channel. I love it. I do appreciate both of you and for your time today. Ronnie, again, thank you so much. I loved this. Absolutely loved this. Shaun, thank you for coming. Your thoughts, as always, are always right on point and so much better than I could come up with. So I really appreciate you and your depth, and I'm just having the best time getting to know you. I love it. It's just amazing. So thank you so much. All right, everybody. Thank you for staying with us. It's been 2 hours and 15 minutes. And so we're going to go ahead and say good evening tonight. So just taking this in and now thinking about this and how do I incorporate this into my, we should all journey every day in dwelling deeper with Yahweh, with God. And how does expanding our view of the universe bring us closer to God? I'm really going to have to do some thinking about that, because that really is going to give me a lot of things to consider. So thank you guys. Thank you all so much. And I hope you are all blessed and have a beautiful weekend. Thank you. And here we go.